All right, welcome back to our special edition of the Energy Outlook Live from Lagos, Nigeria, where we are discussing, of course, as part of marking Nigeria's independence at 65. We're looking at lights and shadows, what has been going on with the power sector since 1960. Why is up NEPA still a thing till today? Even though we have moved from what used to be NEPA, as we have it at the time, to now the Power Holding Company of Nigeria, with all of the reforms that has gone into the power sector, we seem to have been unable to solve the issue of power for a country of 200 million people. We still use the outdated grid, as many experts will say. But what will finally solve the issue of power for our country? Joining me for this conversation, I have two guests with me who are indeed, very distinguished experts within the energy sector. Engineer Ido Ebanjo, who has been on our program before, and we're good to have him back. Our very first guest on the Energy Outlook. Thank you so much for coming back again on the program, Engineer Ido. All right, our second guest who will be joining us on the program is Mr. Afolabi Akerogude, who is an energy expert. Of course, 20 years into the space. We indeed appreciate you for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So I'll start with Mr. Afolabi, really, before I move to Engineer Ido. Mr. Afolabi, I mean, you have done quite a lot of work within the energy sector, and that's why I want to start with you. Then I'll go back to Mr. Engineer Ido, who, he plays very core in the power space. But Mr. Afolabi, how would you describe the state of the power sector at independence in 1960 and where we are now in 2025? How would you describe the power sector?
Okay. Thank you very much again for inviting me. The power sector in Nigeria has grown significantly over the last 65 years. We've had from the very first power plants built before independence down to the post-independence power plants. Once we have the Kainji Dam, of course, which was built in 64. And then down to Jeba, all the hydro plants which we built in the 60s and 70s. And then down also, of course, when gas also started in the 60s, when we built our farm. And of course, the largest power plant which we have in Nigeria today, which is basically the Egni power plant, which is about over 1,320 megawatts or thereabouts. Over this period also, we've also, even as our capacity has been growing, we've also had the other smaller power plants which we've also built, which have mostly been using gas. Of course, since gas became the primary fuel in Nigeria, and of course those have also grown. But the challenge which we've had really has been that as a result of the population growth in Nigeria, as a result of the rise in economic and also, of course, global uses for energy, with computers coming on board, with vehicles on board, and a lot of other uses for energy. Our energy generation, our energy provision infrastructure has not grown to actually match the growth really in the population and also in the economic uses or requirements for power for Nigeria as a country. And of course, once again, of course, also layer on top of that the challenges which we've also had, that even the few things we have, the few infrastructure which we have also not been able to also even be used optimally. I'm sure you hear very, very frequently that we have about 13 gigawatts. That's 13,000 megawatts of infrastructure of power generation infrastructure on ground, whereas we only have about 4,000 to 5,000, depending on weather, seasons, and capacity which the end user actually gets. So if we will use about 4,000 as the average, down to about 13,000, you see that even if we got the mix, transmission, collections, all the issues we have, we can really actually even 3x in terms of what we do with the infrastructure which we have on ground already. So it's been that mix of the infrastructure not growing to actually match up to the growth in the economic in the population, in the need for energy, plus, of course, the inability to also even optimize on the infrastructure which we actually have had as a country as a result of a blend of policy challenges, execution challenges, infrastructure integration challenges, and of course, commercial and other challenges across the line.
Let me come to Engineer Idowu now. Now, same question, but do you think our problem has been our fast growth in population that's really allowed our government to struggle with how to fix the issue of power? Is it our population between 1960 and now, or we have just entirely been inefficient in trying to fix the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. You are right with your assumptions and assertions. Mr. Afolabi Akinrogunde also is correct. We've had problems with planning. You know, the power system has not been properly planned to cater for future growth right from 1960. You know, as the population kept on growing, adequate generation, transmission, and distribution infrastructure was not put in place, to the extent that we now have that misalignment that Mr. Akin Rogunde talked about, when he said we have over 13,000 megawatts of generation capacity, but transmission can only take available capacity of about 5,500, and distribution much less, 3,500. So this is a massive problem that has arisen because of lack of end-to-end investments in the past many decades, lack of power system planning, that's what we call it. People build power stations or power substations or transmission lines to favor their political background. So politics drives installation of these things, and therefore they are scattered in places where they shouldn't have been, or more in certain places and less in the load centers. And you have a problem. Like you emphasized, the Electricity Act is about the only savior we have now, and we hope they can implement that one right.
But also, I wanted to ask you, Engineer Idowu, did we have, in our 65 years journey as a country, was there a time where we actually missed the opportunity to fix this problem, or all efforts, throughout these 65 years were not efforts that were calculated? I'm asking this before we come to the Electricity Act of 2023, which of course we know is having its own issues presently. I might be going back to the National Assembly. But my question is, in our 65 years journey, at what point did we miss the opportunity to actually, would have fixed this problem as a country of power?
I guess once Britain left after helping to build the power system and trained a few people, the first set of officers they had in the early days, early 70s, in 1970, April 72, where they declared NEPA. At that time, they had the opportunity to continue to do proper planning. But I think from the beginning of 1980s, when the military came in, nobody was building the power systems. Nobody was investing critically in that power infrastructure. And since that time, we lost the plot. So now that that plot is lost, the only way forward that can help Nigeria is the decentralization enabled by this Electricity Act. Of course, if they implement that correctly also.
All right. Mr. Falabi, I'll come back to you now. And my question will be that what is our main pain point? Is it the issue of transmission, or is it distribution that seems to be our biggest challenge? Where is our biggest challenge, Mr. Falabi?
Oh, I think I get asked this question maybe every week or thereabouts. But really, it's the problem is, I think there's a lot of noise around transmission because, of course, if you have 13,000 megawatts or 13 gigawatts in Genco, in generating infrastructure, And of course, the final consumer is getting 3,500, 4,000 at best, megawatts or 4 gigawatts. Then you say that really, all of that, all of it, you can then easily, 4x, and basically, the average, the power that gets to people, it gets to about 300% of what they're getting now. But at the other end also, one thing about real life is that many things in life are not one answer. You also have a challenge in the distribution end where there's a lot of failure rate. I think once you remove probably the 2 discos in Lagos and probably Port Harcourt and one more, the remaining discos in Nigeria are probably securing maybe about average of 60% of their revenue. So 40% of everything that flows into them is basically slipping away through ATC and C losses or some form of the other, which then means that even if you correct the 13 gigawatts we have and push all that 13 gigawatts by some miracle, by some reform or whatever we've been able to do with the transmission infrastructure, you will still have a good chance that maybe even 45, it's only about 45% of that will get to the final user, or even the whole system will even collapse, as my good engineer on the call, who is very, very, the infrastructure cannot take it. So at one end is transmission, and at the other end you then have distribution where basically a lot of electrons are leaking through the system. And like many other things that are infrastructure based, you need to fix every part of it. Because if you don't fix every part of it, you are going to end up at square one.
Mr. Falabi, should we just get rid of this national grid? Will that not be the faster way to solve this problem? Is it possible?
No, I think where we are in Nigeria is such that we have an opportunity. Probably, the average Ghanaian gets about 3 to 4x more power than the average Nigerian. So really, we have the opportunity to really even do 4 or 5 times of what we're doing right now. So we have the opportunity with the right political will, with the right laws. I think we've always had very, very good laws in Nigeria, with the right political will and also with the support of all the stakeholders that are needed to actually recreate our grid and build a grid where the grid which we have right now is basically reformed or basically made to basically work well. It's stabilized, where then you reduce the losses, you increase the reliability, you meet the existing demand, you optimize on that grid, make it work. Then you begin to move towards things like modernization, which basically means you begin to have grids that then tap into it. Eco-Disco, not only, for example, takes power from the national grid, can then have its own generation infrastructure, which then connects to it to serve the people in Lagos. Because, for example, Lagos needs a lot more power than what they can get from the grid. So you have all sorts. Then you also begin to have renewable energy, mini grids, whatever needs to be able to also tap into that, so that you then have a system that is like engineer said earlier, basically designed to cater to the new Nigeria that we have on ground now. Whether it's in the north where you have a lot of sunlight, you have solar arrays which can basically complement what they get from the grid, and it's tied to the areas where they can then basically need that power. So we basically keep the grid, optimize on that grid, but begin to tap on the areas that are necessary for each part of the country, such that we then begin to have a grid that works. And then once we're able to do that, then we transform the entire ecosystem. You start having things like virtual power plants, you start having all sorts of multi-party wheeling, you start having things like power trading, you start having all sorts of ancillary service markets. We then create a system which we have similar to what we have in South Africa or other parts of the world. So first of all, stabilize, use that grid, then modernize, then integrate, really, or modernize and integrate. Use your gas, in other parts, use your solar in other parts, add it to the grid, solve the areas where the grid cannot solve, and then of course move it into then transforming, so that we then have a liquid market which can then basically work excellently. So that, I think, is what we need to do as a country. But any solution that doesn't involve solving the problem we have in the grid cannot work. You have to solve that problem first.
Now this brings me back to Engineer Idowu, now who is more technical with all of this. Engineer Idowu, to what extent is Nigeria's power problem technical, and to what extent is government related? I ask this because quite a lot of reforms since the Fourth Republic in 1999 have gone into the power sector, but we still do not see I mean, the kind of progress we're supposed to be seeing. So, is this a technical matter or government related itself? I mean, I'm not sure, but you tell us better. I mean, you've been in this space a bit longer. Engineer Do?
Yeah, thank you. Technical, commercial, yes, they work together. It's an end-to-end problem. Imagine what Mr. Falabi said just now. About 40% of the electricity that goes into the grid is lost in one form of the other. Aggregate, technical, commercial, collection, losses, ATC and C, you know, as well as electricity thefts. People bypass electricity, people steal electricity, electricity abstraction. So what you have physically, if you put 1 megawatt into the network, you find about 50% lost. Out of the 50% lost, the distribution companies go to the consumers. They cannot get money from them. Some of them will, if you try to go and cut their lights, then they will put dogs. Some will even bring snakes to attack the people trying to collect the cash. So there is a lot of financial loss or revenue problem in the sector. Having said that, you cannot fix one and leave the other because they go pari passu. So if 50% of what is coming in is lost, you need to fix that. If they cannot collect enough funds from the consumers or customers, you need to fix that, which you do by metering and making sure that electricity theft is impossible for the consumers or customers to carry out. And this should rely on technology. You take it out of the hands of the customers so that they cannot influence it. The solutions are there. There is need for um, technical know-how to make all of these kind of things work. One thing you must not forget is that when they privatized in 2013, the hope was that all of these problems will be solved. But last, they said they designed it to fail. One of the regulators in the early days said, well, it was designed to fail. Can you imagine that? So, in a way, you are saying that all those who are involved should have been arrested or in a form or the other, they should be brought to book. Because if they designed it to fail, that's the thing we are now seeing now. Why did he say that? Is because these people gave it to people who are not financially and technically and commercially competent. So, what do I mean by that? For you to be given a power system, and out of a power system as an investor, you must have very huge funds. And these funds will not be coming from banks like Fidelity Banks or commercial banks in Nigeria. There are long-term funds that the person expects the return on investment in about 2 decades, 20 years. So these long-term funds are huge for power system development. But in the case of Nigerian power sector, when the people who have this technical and financial capacity came on board, they were the ones about to win the different distribution companies at that time. But suddenly, something Nigerian factor came in. All of them withdrew because of Nigerian factor. So the things were now given to the the friends and families of those who are in power, who are in the position of authority at that time. And those ones didn't know. They thought it was going to be like telecoms, that MTN came in and raking money, before Globalcom came and the competition set in Vodafone and all of them. So these people came in without investing next to nothing in the last 12 years. They're just trying to take what we call sweating the assets, recoup their investments. And as you can see, they can't even get their investment back. So the banks that borrowed them money, they are now taking over the distribution companies. So about 6 of them have been taken over, and I'm sure more will be taken over. At the end of the day, it will return back to square zero, really. So if you want to give electricity management to any entity, first, you must make sure that the entity has demonstrable verifiable experience of running electricity distribution system, not only electricity distribution, electricity transmission, or electricity generation, any part. Also, the regulator, you must use meritocracy. You see, the absence of meritocracy is a big problem in Nigeria. And in Nigeria, in the power sector, more so, you can never get a power system right by putting mediocrity before meritocracy. You
Engineer
will
though,
never. Do whatever you like, pump money as many times you like.
yeah,
You will not get it. Yeah, go ahead.
yes, Engineer though, sorry for me to butt in here. Since 1999, quite a lot of reforms, have gone into the power sector, including the 2013 privatization you just talked about, not quite long. And in 2023, we had another one again that, everybody has been celebrating. But quickly, what has been the issue with the most recent one that in 2 years we are returning to the National Assembly? Is it that, again, this one was built to fail? Is that what we are seeing?
No, not at all. This Electricity Act 2023, signed on June 9, 2023 by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is the surest way out for Nigeria. But like everything in Nigeria, when they see that it's about to go right, vested interest now pick up. Look at the issue you talked about in the beginning of this program, at the beginning of this program, about Pengesan trying to disturb Dangote, which I don't want to comment upon. You mentioned all the right stuff there. So as soon as they realize that, oh, this is the way to go, the people who will not want Nigeria to develop in the power sector area, they have now the ones trying to kick back, to roll back of decentralization, which that Electricity Act tries to achieve, removing the power from over centralization, which is making sure you devolve power to the states. They signed it, then realized, wow, we've lost our cash cow. We are going to lose the hold on Nigeria. We are not going to be able to hold it down any longer if we allow this thing to go on. So they want to truncate it quickly. This is the move that you are saying. You are hearing that they want to take it back to National Assembly for review. They want to destroy that prospect of certain states which will develop. They know the states. The whole of Nigeria knows these states that can develop. You can see them quickly. You can see what Abia is doing quickly. You can see what Enugu is trying to do with the impasse that happened recently. You see Lagos trying to do.
But with
So
the
we know the
engineer,
states.
engineer,
We
though, but with the issue in
know
Enugu,
those states in Nigeria that want to pull
but
Nigeria down.
But with the issue we saw in Enugu, where it raises commercial concerns, are you not bothered about that? That we might just be creating quite a lot of problem or commercial issues, especially around tariffs. If we don't amend the law, don't you see any issue around that?
You see, the people in Enugu, they have tried to save Nigeria. If we look into that matter transparently, you will see that Nigeria has been paying over much for electricity over the years, because all the subsidies that are already inside that Mayoto model, they've been able to uncover them, they've looked at them, then the charges that the discos are putting up, which are not realistic, they've checked them, they've discussed with the Enugu subsidiary that the mail that they were discussing with. They've shown them that, look, this cost is high, and they've removed the excesses. And that's how they were able to bring the prices low. But the over concentration of power tried to force it on them to return to status quo. So what will happen if you have all the states having their own electricity market is that you start to see a different Nigeria. But I'm afraid vested interests don't want that.
All right, we'll go on a quick break. And when we come back, I move to Afolabi with a few more questions around alternative energy sources. Of course, since 1999, just for the last 5 years, we've seen quite a lot of things pick up around alternative energy solutions like renewables and solar. But again, investment in that area is quite a big challenge. Afolabi has played so much in investment within that space. He'll be talking to us about some of those things. But stay with us. We'll go on a quick break. I'll be right back.
Nigeria, by extension, Africa, battles a growing youthful population, and with little or no meaningful engagement, leaves a ticking time bomb on our hands. We are a blessed continent with great wealth, both in people and material. Our focus on ways remains driving conversations that affects us all. Topics in the news, social concerns, politics, leadership, governance, empowerment, resource management, conflict management, finance, SME sustainability, technological innovation, food security, health, education, brain drain, our well-being, citizenship, and much more. Our goal is to continuously drive these conversations, keep them burning at the table to effect a positive change, both for our nation and continent. Ways, what are you saying, has a secret ingredient that completes the conversation every single episode, and that ingredient is you. Our past conversations shaped our yesterday. To shape our tomorrow, we must keep talking. So, I want to hear you. Be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays. And let's all have our say.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. This is still the Energy Outlook Live, and we're discussing the power issues since independence 1960 rather, 65 years journey of Nigeria, and why power seems to still be an issue. I'll quickly come to my guest, Mr. Falabi Akerogude. Mr. Falabi, for the first time in the history of our country, especially since the Fourth Republic, states now have the powers to generate, transmit and distribute power supply, of course, in their various states, and make the laws that define what power should be in their different states. But before this law came, there were areas that were not covered by the grids that the state could, find alternative solutions to, make up some of those states or provide access to power or electricity for those states. But they never harnessed any of those opportunities. I'm always curious to ask, so now that they can generate, transmit, and distribute, what's going to be different, especially, coming from your history or background where you've played quite a lot in off-grid areas, solar renewables. Do you see anything different happening? If when they could, they didn't do anything, they waited till now they say they have the powers to. What's going to be different, basically? That's what I want to ask.
Again, Nigeria has about, I think, 430 gigawatts of solar potential, which is well over 100 times of what you currently use today. I don't think we have up to 500 megawatts of solar installed across the country by way of mini grids. So in terms of the gap to potential in Nigeria, it is huge. Even if it 10 or 20x what we have now, we haven't done anything as a country. We have all the right policies, all the right plans. The renewable energy master plan. We have the renewable energy policy, which has been put in place. The optimized Nigerian national energy policy, which has also incorporated renewable energy into it. All of those have been put into place. However, what we've seen really has been, other than the federal, rural electrification agency, which has effectively driven the off-grid renewable energy drive into off-grid communities across Nigeria. I think the bulk of the states in the country have not done much in that regard. What has been seen in the last 3 years has been that a lot more of these states have been keen into the work that the REA has been doing to basically facilitate a deeper penetration of those initiatives by the REA. So I think the critical thing that needs to be done now by the states which are concerned is going to be basically to find out what is being done. If there's capacity to put, for example, 30 megawatts in a state, what can they then do to basically turn that to about 40, 45, 50 megawatts, such that they basically leverage upon that to double to double the capacity, or at least add 50-40% onto what is being planned, so that there is a lot of state and federal integration. Nobody can solve this problem alone in Nigeria. Everybody needs to work together. The states have what they can do. They can provide land, they can provide access, they can provide right of way, they can provide tax benefits. There are a lot of ways which the states can also facilitate improved energy access using renewable within their as far as off-grid is concerned. Another thing which we also then need to do will then be for the various states which are so advantaged as far as solar is concerned, to then begin to then see how can they integrate this solar into what their discos are doing, so that we then begin to have integrated mini grids which basically are integrated into the discos infrastructure, such that you don't need to, for example, build your own distribution cables. You can use the metering infrastructure. You can wholesale power, for example, into a disco to basically do that, so that everything is integrated. You need to find a way so that as Nigeria, the states what they can do, the states what they are good at, the federal what they are good at, the private investors what they are good at, everybody does what they need to do to basically facilitate that. Once you've done that, then you then move to the next level, which is basically how can the states then begin to identify areas within their states which they can then pull private investment into. After what the REA has done, how can they build? Where are the commercial areas? Where are the industrial areas which are building up in their states? What are the gaps in energy usage? Who are the investors they can work with? Whether it's going to be gas, whether it's going to be hydro, where that is possible, whether it's going to be, of course, solar. How can you then put that into it such that you then key, so that, for example, if a project is going to need, I don't know, if 200 million naira in permits and approvals, and I remove that 200 million naira from you, I give you land free of charge, and make things easy. I've basically given you $1 billion and a half in costs striking off your project. That makes your project much more bankable. That makes your project much more easier to deliver, makes it much more easier to drive energy access into those communities. So number one basically is to key into what the REA is doing. Some states are doing that. And then secondly, you then need to then drive your own infrastructure, your own ambition, working with the private sector, working with the parties who can work to basically, and then as the state, use what you have, which is regulations, which is ease of doing business, which is making things easier for them to enable them basically drive energy access into your state. This, of course, requires political capital. Some of the things which are going to be done go beyond one tenure, and that is the challenge we have. You need to have a governor who is happy to devote 6, 7, 8 years, or even not even have all of this done over the tenure of his state as a governor. And that is where usually a lot of good ideas start, but they die mid-term.
Another major challenge, Mr. Falabi, is investors' confidence. How would you describe that? Do you see that as a much bigger challenge, or with the new Electricity Act that may have revived investor confidence in the power sector? Because we need that so much. There's quite been a lot of failures since 1999. In the power sector, with investors' funds, they don't know how to recoup it till now. But now that we are moving to the states, do you see a refined investor confidence in the power sector?
I believe what I see now is really a lot of interest from Nigerian investors, potential Nigerian investors, who see a lot of the good work being done in Abia, being done in Enugu, being done in Lagos, being done in Ogun State, and are really, really interested basically in working with those states to basically facilitate a power provision within those states. What we haven't seen yet in a huge way really has been the non-Nigerian foreign investors. And of course, I totally understand this. Quite a few people have looked at our environment. If you look at it yourself with the issues we've had over the last 25 years, we would be very, very concerned about investing in Nigeria at this time. But of course, a lot of good things have been done, have been started. I would expect that some of these investors will want to see how Nigeria operates over the next 5 to 6 years. Once we see that we've been able to deliver, on these good ideas, on these good laws, on these good regulations which we put in place, then of course, and they start seeing the first projects begin to look good. They begin to deliver those steady cash flows. Begin to see, for example, also that the naira is also holding firm. Because apart from whatever government is able to do, apart from whatever the states are able to do at the state or federal level, apart from whatever the Nigerian investors are able to do, it's also clear that if you are going to drive investment into this ecosystem, a lot of the costs are forex, a lot of the inputs are forex, a lot of the people that will bring money in and are bringing USD in. And of course, we will need macroeconomic stability to basically ensure that every naira that you are generating doesn't lose half of its value by the time it's time for you to get your money out of it. So there is the policy bit, there's the execution bit, then there's also the macroeconomic stability bit, which also needs to be managed, which of course the power sector will be a prime beneficiary of if it's done well.
Let me bring Engineer Do now. As I have, this question is, help us, as at today, looking at our journey since the Fourth Republic to where we are now. Engineer Do, what is the cost of power as at today, in your view, or what should it be, the cost of power as at today?
First, let me, sorry to take you back. I want to make what the states were doing when they had the areas not covered by the grid. Yes. To be frank, they were not doing much. Okay. Because they should have done a lot, like REA. They should have been their local REA, but they didn't. But the reason they will put as excuse may be, okay, those places may not be commercially viable. We have to watch that. We have to watch the fact that people who had the opportunity to do things for many years in the areas that are not covered by the national grid, they didn't do it. So that's a minus. However, with this Electricity Act, they now have the commercially viable areas to also look at. More so, they have the regulatory powers. So we expect them to now do things properly. And to do things properly, you need to appoint the right kind of people as your regulators. The right kind of person with experience with the legal matters to handle the legal issues, market issues, the engineer to handle the engineering aspect. The commissioners have to be meritocratically appointed. So that's number one. And then they will work with people who are knowledgeable in the industry, whether local or international. They must bring expertise to join them in running that electricity market. They must do it like they do it in any country that has 24/7 electricity. If you don't run your Nigerian power system like they run it in places that have 24/7 electricity, you will never get it right. If you don't have a data-based electricity market, you need data. Like the question you asked me now, what should be the cost of electricity? What should the cost of electricity be? I can't answer that question effectively without adequate data. There's no adequate, reliable data about the number of customers, about the cost of generation, the amount of losses, and so on and so forth. You have to put all of these things together. But I think it's very clear that the cost should not be that more than 100 at all. Because look, you can see what is being declared by utilities as profit before tax or even after tax. If you look at in the last 3 years, what the electricity companies have been declaring as in their books as profit, you will see clearly that they are making money. Nobody's going to remain in a business that is not making money. Okay, so but because everything is upside down, yeah, go ahead.
No. Finish your thoughts. We are wrapping up the program, but finish your thoughts, sir.
Yeah, because if there is no adequate data and adequate monitoring of things, financial flows and technical flows, you end up with a situation whereby everyone is guessing. And I must tell you, that Myoto model needs re-examining. It's no longer fit for purpose, and inside it is embedded a lot of cost that's been put on consumers and is multiple dipping on them.
Thank you so much. So as you're wrapping up, just 30 seconds each, I would like to know if you could identify one decisive action to shift Nigeria's power sector from shadows to light. What would it be? 30 seconds. One decisive action. I'll start from Engineer Do, then we'll just end with Mr. Falabi.
Okay, mine would be meritocracy in appointments at all levels, at all agencies of the power sector.
Okay.
Deeply entrench the Electricity Act, make sure all states implement it, and then make sure power system planning is the basis for fixing projects and make sure those projects are financially and technically viable.
All right, Mr. Falabi, what about you?
I think one activity to the rock sentence is going to be to operate the laws as a individual. No politics, no extensions to any discourse, to any gencos, um, no, no, no debts owed by any parties. If if the discos do well, no, reward them. If they don't do well, punish them. Operate the laws as they are, or interpret them as they are, operate them as they are, and the sector would basically work. Our problem, yes, we can say we have a few issues here and there, but our problem is not policies, it's not laws. Our problem is integration and execution. So operate the laws.
Our problem is integration and execution, so we should operate the law. Gentlemen, thank you so much, Engineer Idowu Oyebanjo, who is Managing Director of Itform Power Engineering Consultants Limited, and then Mr. Afolabi Akerogode, who is an energy expert. Thank you so much for joining me on the program. 65 years of Nigeria's independence. I want to wish you both happy independence. Some of us, we have seen power issues right from when we were kids and now we're adults. I'm sure you have seen more worse than me. And we hope that the issues come to an end very soon. But thank you so much for your time on the program. Thank you so much. All right, this is all we have for you for this week. And we hope we've been able to give you some more enlightenment on our journey, 65 years as Nigerian, and why this issue of power has persisted. We hope that soon enough it will be a history behind us. My name is Wisdom Chap Jumbo, and in case you miss all other episodes of the program, you can just quickly watch it on our YouTube channel at Official Upgrade TV. We've had quite a lot of interesting conversations and episodes that you want to catch up with. And same station, same time, next week, we'll bring you another very important conversation. Until then, do have a lovely weekend and stay blessed.